Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Today we have an object lesson in how an attorney can save you thousands of dollars and a lot of heartache. It is a sad tale that begins in 2006 when a gal by the name of Rosie buys a beautiful piece of property in Florida. It's beach property. It comes with deeded beach access. Now, the record isn't clear as to whether Rosie ever intended to live there or just rent it out to the legions of gullible people who are willing to pay $4,500 for a week on the beach during the summer. Whatever the situation was, it was all good in 2006, and it remained that way for 2 years. Then a funny thing happened. Well, maybe not so funny. Around 2008, the stock market and the housing market both crashed because banks were doing something called loan packaging. They were loaning money to people who did not have the means to pay the mortgages. They were called subprime mortgages. And they were packaging these loans as investments, and investors were snapping them up. Well, when people stopped paying their notes, they set about the process of mass foreclosure. Hey folks, please excuse the interruption, but let me ask you if you haven't already, please subscribe. And if you would, hit that like button and maybe even leave a comment. That tells YouTube that this is a valuable video and they'll refer it to more people. It helps me out a lot and I appreciate it. Thank you. Then a funny thing happened. Well, it wasn't funny to the banks, but it was kind of funny to the rest of us, I think. And that is the banks who had put all this stuff together and sold all these packages with all these notes, they couldn't find all of the signed documents that they needed to foreclose on many of these houses. And that was especially true down in Florida. And for that reason, in Florida and many other places, the foreclosures were denied. Now, Rosie, the real estate tycoon, unfortunately couldn't make the note, and in 2008, she stopped paying on it. Knowing that she was going to be foreclosed upon, she moved out. A series of squatters moved in and they were thrown out by the HOA. The home was a wreck as a result of people who didn't care that the water and power had been turned off and did what people do in bathrooms when there's no water or power or any means to send that stuff down into the sewer. And as you might imagine, the house smelled bad, black mold grew up in the walls and in the attic. It was a total wreck. And amazingly, those squatters, well, they wouldn't cut the lawn. So to preserve the neighborhood appearance, the HOA cut the lawn and they billed the owner and issued fines. And those fines and bills went uncollected. They had to continue cutting the yard. And so the HOA did what HOAs do in that situation because the covenants allow it. They foreclosed on the property and they sold the property for back fines and costs. There was only one problem with this. Like all states, Florida has a system of deed recording. And when you record a deed, you also record any liens or property interests that other people have. And when a property is sold on the courthouse steps at an auction by an HOA, the person who buys it buys no more title than the HOA has. In this case, the HOA did not own the property, but they could sell their interest in the property, which was their back assessments, and that's exactly what they did. The sheriff duly executed a sheriff's deed, and the buyer then did what he likely should have done long before he bid on the property. He looked at the chain of title, concluded he did not have good and marketable title, and put the property up for sale. But now let's take a short detour. Many people speculate on property, and as a result of that, many people speculate on debts that do not go collected on. Well, when a debt that doesn't go collected on is merged with beach property that is especially valuable, there is a tremendous interest to enforce the mortgage. And here, the mortgage recorded on the property when it was sold in 2006 was not being paid. The buyers had vanished. The original holder of the note couldn't find them to sue them and didn't want to waste money paying the HOA for servicing the property, so it did what many of these banks do in this situation. It sold its note. Now, to pick a number, if the bank loaned $350,000 on the property and it only collected $10,000 in principal at the time that they sold the property, That left a balance of $340,000 left to be collected, and no buyer is going to pay the bank $340,000 for that note, even if the title and deed of trust are in great shape. So note buyer number one buys it, keeps it for several years, and even pays the taxes on it. But he gets tired of having this thing that he can't collect on, so he sells it to number two. Number two in the title chain then sells it to number three, and number three sells it to number four in 2018. Every time it's sold, the value given for the note is much less. The last note holder probably has less than $200,000 in the note. But this is their business, and they see where that property is, and they have access to Zillow, and they know that if they foreclose on that property and they sell it, they can turn that $200,000 into $800,000 for a slight cost in attorney's fees. Now, the person who bought the property at the HOA sale recognizes there's a prior claim on the property for the right to the property, and he sells the property to another buyer via quitclaim deed for about $1,000 more than he paid for it. He's clear in pointing out that there could be problems with the title and that he can't give a warranty deed. He didn't hold anything back. He didn't commit any fraud. His buyer was not someone who was sophisticated in routinely buying property at auction and didn't realize that the bank had a priority interest. He cleans up the property, replaces things inside the home, and restores it to a serviceable, livable, and rentable condition. And then 2 years later, after he's put the property into service as a rental property, he gets sued in a foreclosure action, even though he never signed the note, because he has a claim now on the property. In most states, since the bank had notice of the foreclosure by the HOA, their failure to bid on the property at the HOA sale would, by virtue of the doctrine of Latches, render their claim or their priority claim waived. But not in Florida. Similarly, in most states, the statute of limitations would start running when the last payment was made on the note in 2008, meaning that they had until 2013 to sue. But again, not in Florida. Florida restarts the statute of limitations with every missed payment, and when you have a 30-year mortgage, there are a lot of payments. So as you might imagine, you really have a 35-year statute of limitations. And Latches isn't recognized in this context. Now you may wonder what Latches is. Latches is an equitable doctrine that says when someone changes position in relation to your failure or refusal to exercise your rights, you lose the right you sat idly by on. But again, not in Florida. Had the person who purchased the property via quitclaim deed recognized that the quitclaim deed only prevented the person who bought the property at the HOA auction from making a claim on the property and did not stop anyone else with a claim on the property from making that claim, they likely would not have bought the property, and they certainly wouldn't have put more than $100,000 worth of materials and probably more than that worth of sweat and equity into restoring the home to a livable condition. Yet a search of the county records would have disclosed the mortgage. It might not have disclosed who currently owned the mortgage, but that should have alerted the buyer to the problem. But it only alerts you if you know how to look for it and where to look for it, which is at the Recorder of Deeds. The note holder, the fifth person in the chain of title on the original mortgage, is now poised to get summary judgment and take possession of the property, and there's likely nothing anyone can do at this point to help the person who bought the property and fixed the property. They have probably lost a huge investment. So this is why when you buy a piece of property, whether you buy it from a realtor, from a bank, from a foreclosure sale, at the courthouse steps, wherever it is you buy it, you demand a warranty deed, not a quitclaim deed, not a sheriff's deed. This is why when you buy a piece of property, you pay a lawyer to do a title search to make sure no one has a lien on the property. This is why you make sure your lawyer has malpractice insurance and that you have title insurance in order to assure yourself that you're not going to lose your investment if something goes south. Now, lawyers, lots of times, and for many good reasons, are often looked at as just another person sticking out their hand at the end of the day at closing. Lots of folks feel that way, and I can't say that I blame them. But the value that they provide is this: if there's a problem after closing that they could have caught and should have caught, you then have some recourse against them even if you don't have recourse against the person who claims on the property or the person who sold it to you. Learn from the mistakes of others. Know what the law is. I've pointed out previously on here that tax sales and tax deeds are not the panacea that people often think they are. Now, experienced buyers know what they have to do to follow the series of steps necessary to perfect and quiet title, but most people don't. It might cost you $200 to $400 to get a legal opinion on your property purchase, but it might very well be the best money you spend at closing. So yesterday I did a video about our trip to Disney, and I neglected to mention one of the kindest things that we experienced down there. Our 3-year-old granddaughter loves noodles. She especially loves chicken noodle soup, and my wife found a place called Saigon Noodle and Grill in downtown Orlando that serves, among other things, pho. Now you may see that spelled P-H-O, not P-H-A, but it's pronounced pho. Now I don't know if you've ever had pho or not, but if you have, you know how great it is, and if not, you're missing out. It's a really great meal. That is the best chicken soup or beef soup or shrimp soup that you can get. So we made a trip to the restaurant. We explained that we were there for the noodles, and we had a waiter who was phenomenal. He took great pains to take good care of the 3-year-old. He took a pair of kitchen shears and cut up her noodles for her. He made over her like she was a little queen. He went way above and beyond the call of duty. The pho was wonderful, but the people were outstanding. So I don't promote anything on this channel, but I am going to give a shout out to this place because I will go back there. If you like pho, or if you just like good chicken noodle soup, it's a great place to go. And I always prefer to eat where people are kind, and those folks are kind. If you have the opportunity today to do something nice for someone, please do so. Go out of your way, open a door, pick up something that somebody drops, help somebody manage a heavy load, whatever it is, do something nice for someone. Well, that's what I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Be thoughtful, be kind, and be back here tomorrow at the beach where we'll talk about something else interesting. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.